The Wish School in North Hartford stands on ground once charred by the greatest catastrophe in circus history, the Hartford Circus fire of July 6, 1944. Here, on a hot, humid afternoon 25 years ago, the canvas big top of the greatest show on earth burst into flame, taking a toll of 169 lives and injuring more than 500. This is Joe Crowley with the story of that tragedy, told by persons on the scene and with motion picture film of the actual fire. A fire that left behind the puzzling mystery of Little Miss 1565, the little girl victim who was never identified. Veteran circus fan William Day of New Britain remembers the fire and a visit with circus performers.
Actually, my recollection of this whole tragic event begins the night before. Mrs. Day and I were at the circus the night of the 5th, and as was customary, she had invited two of the couples to come over to our house in New Britain and spend the night between the two show days at our house where they could get some home-cooked food and have a friendly visit. And the two that were to come with us were Paul and Elsie Jung. Paul was a famous producing clown on the Ringling Show, and Roy and Juanita Deisler. And incidentally, when I mention her, it'll be Neats, because that's how she was known by everybody on the show who knew her. We picked them up, and as we were driving along, Neats said, "Did any of you happen to notice the moon tonight?" And I think I was the one who spoke up and said, "I did, and I never saw it bigger or redder in my life." Neats, knowing that Roy was superstitious, said, "Roy, come here, look at this. Isn't it beautiful?" She said, he almost shuddered and said, "No, you know it isn't beautiful." And I said innocently, "Why not?" He said, "You know the old Indian legend, blood on the moon, many people will die before the next moon."
Lieutenant Tom Barber is retired from the Hartford Police Department. On July 6, 1944, Detective Barber was among those on duty at the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus.
When the fire started, I was standing inside the big tent, 20 feet from the main entrance. They had brought in a reserved ticket booth. As the customers came in, they had to go through 2 ropes to buy a ticket for the reserved section. The Tiger Act at the entrance, near the entrance of the circus, was on at the time when the fire started. I heard somebody holler fire, and I looked up, and I see a big, well, I should say about a foot wide or less at the top of the tent on the opposite side from where I was standing. And it spread mighty fast, and I cut the ropes that was a passageway between the booth. And the booth did fall down, and the people started coming out. And they were all cleared on this end of the entrance. And I saw one man trying to get a woman on my left. And I rushed over there and gave her a jerk and helped her and this man out. She was caught in the bleachers. Then I went to the back of the tent, and the whole thing has collapsed in the meantime. So a few minutes later, I went in and helped take out the people that were in there and give them all the help I could, lifting them off the pilot near the pile near the big runway where the Tigers Act, the big line act rather, was on. The runway runs from the outside of the tent to the cage where the act is on. See, and when the animals leave there, they leave through that runway directly to their cages or wagons that's alongside of the tent. Where we lost the majority was at the mine act. That was the cage at the stage entrance. Oh, I should say it's about 30 feet from the entrance in the back of the tent. That's the stage entrance. The runway there was about 6 feet high, like an iron slats. See, they couldn't climb it, and they fell. As they fell, somebody else tried to climb it, and they fell one up. Well, they were 7 or 8 deep there.
We started going up to go out an exit, which was blocked by an animal car and people. That's when we came to the animal runway, and it was quite hard to get over it because there was no way of getting a hold of it and pulling yourself over because of your feet went right through it. So you had to get over it. You had to be pushed over or thrown over. So my father pushed me, and he threw my cousin to me because he was very young.
How did your father get over?
He sort of just threw himself over. He ran back a little ways and just more or less dove over because it was so high you couldn't get over any other way.
Lieutenant, were there animals in that runway at the time?
No. The minute the fire started, they opened that cage door and they went right through the runway into their own wagons and alongside of the tent.
What do you think caused the fire?
I think somebody either put a cigarette or a cigar trying to put it out on the roof, on the tent, or the roof of the tent. And that tent was loaded with paraffin. And the minute that cigar or cigarette hit that tent, she went fast.
The circus claimed that fireproofing chemicals for their tents were not available because of wartime priorities. Just how fast the big top went up was captured on movie film by the late Robert Honorado of Plainville, who had taken his young son and his 8mm movie camera to the circus that day. For the first time on television then, here is that film, as captured by Mr. Honorado 25 years ago. To help tell the story, we've added to the silent film the voice of Frank Adams of East Hartford, who was in the circus audience with his wife and 3 children.
There was an explosion sort of a thing, and a quarter of the tent was gone with this one flash. And I got to the railing and got the children over, and I got into this surge of people that literally took me with them towards the exit. And I managed to get back to my wife. She handed the baby to me over the railing. We got her over, and I kept saying to the family, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. And we did. We got out, and I noticed people who were looking for loved ones were unconsciously blocking the exit of people who were coming out. And I started to direct people to open up the exit so other people could get out. And I then finally got my family clear of everything. They were bringing in, the elephants were starting to push in these wagons of water. And I immediately, when I got my family to one side, we all knelt down. And we thanked God that we got out safe. And I began to see other people kneeling down all around, praying for loved ones.
the Hartford circus fire, as filmed 25 years ago by Robert Honorato. When news of the fire was flashed to City Hall, Mayor William Mortensen hurried to the scene.
When I arrived there, I saw the horrible Holocaust. Well, I was glad to see that the police and the firemen were doing a wonderful job of emergency provisions. We then sent a call out for Ed Hickey, who was there almost on the instant. He was our state police commissioner. The first thing that I thought had to be done, aside from setting up a morgue, which Mr. Hickey undertook, was to start an investigation while all the evidence was fresh. Obviously, we were arranging for all the injured and dead to be provided for.
When nothing more could be done at the smoldering circus grounds, Tom Barber and fellow detective Ed Lowe were assigned to the emergency morgue at the State Army to assist with the identification of victims.
Lowe and I was assigned to the checkout stand. As a body was identified, they had to go through us before the body left the Army. But they were mistakes made there. We ran into a few of them. If parents were lost in a fire and somebody had to come to identify the parents or the children that was with them, so they got an uncle or an in-law for identification purposes. Oh, there were 6 left that were not identified. There were 3 adults and 3 children. But this Miss 1565 that we had her tagged, she could have been identified easily. There's only one side of her face that was burned, and part of her body.
My wife and I visited the homes of the bereaved for the next 4 days in Hartford, and she and I undertook to bury the unidentified dead, of whom there were 6, plus a 7th that wasn't classified as such since it was only a crushed skull with no body. We buried the 6 persons, including a sweet little girl of about 6 years of age who was a blue-eyed blonde with hair down to her shoulders, and one side of her face had not been marred, and yet there never was an identification of her. She became known as Miss 1565.
The 2 easiest people to identify were this little girl and a woman whom I've always felt was her mother. She was a larger woman, had narrow ankles, but I thought that she was possibly the mother of 1565.
This woman would be one of the other 5 people who
Yes.
have not been identified.
That's my impression.
Do you have any medical basis for suspecting that the woman and the little girl might be related? Did you say that they both had small ankles? This was something that...
Had small ankles, small wrists, and I would say small frames. We in medicine talk about the frame of a person, and I would say those 2 had small frames.
So they looked enough alike to at least make you suspect that they might be related.
And I still suspect.
Did you yourself become involved in the efforts to try and identify little Miss 1565?
Day after day after day, we were working to try to find out who that little girl was. We called out to California, Arizona, Oregon, Maine. Well, every place you can think of, we called, we phoned, trying to identify this little girl. And if anybody had reported a little girl missing, we were unsuccessful. And I must say that Eddie Lowe and Tom Barber did a marvelous job in trying to run down these clues, whatever you want to call them.
And looking over our list of missing people, we had 6 persons missing in Hartford and the vicinity of Hartford. There was also a little girl, missing from Middletown. And she was about the same age, the same height, about the same color hair. So this was in the fall of the year that we went down to Middletown and made inquiries there. At the school that she attended, the mailman that delivered the mail, neighbors next door, showed them a photograph we had, but that was not this girl. Of course, the letters that we got from practically all over the country giving us advice, and maybe it was so-and-so. And we followed up on every one of them. We never come up with anything.
Out of the ashes of the circus fire rose staggering financial and legal problems for the circus. Charges of manslaughter sent 6 officials and employees of Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus to prison and jail for terms ranging from 6 months to 7 years. The toll of the fire, 169 dead and more than 500 injured, brought an avalanche of claims against the circus, totaling more than $50 million.
The Common Council of that day, or the Board of Aldermen, voted to permit the mayor to appoint a committee of distinguished citizens to study the circus fire and the implications to involved in our city charter and in the operations at City Hall. They gave us a very skillful summary, and I think showed great perspicacity in the analysis. This Board of Inquiry report is dated November 1944. They pointed out the lack of coordination in the City Hall between health and building and fire and police and all the other departments. There was a very casual relationship. And all of these factors of control and safety inspection should have been better coordinated. But there were interim changes which we had to implement immediately, and these had to do with licensing and with requirements for safety in both enclosed buildings, of course, and in public assemblages. 37 cities asked us for the results of our finding and asked for copies of the report and the ensuing legislation. Mayor Tobin of Boston, Mayor LaGuardia of New York, evidenced interest from the very first day. They called up the evening of the fire and asked to be kept informed of the handling of it. And as a result of the inquiry, I had made up my mind to sponsor a change in the charter of Hartford. Within a year, the Board of Aldermen authorized the mayor to set up a charter revision commission. Well, that commission reported back a new charter for Hartford, which I think gave us a wonderful continuity of management, gave us most effective coordination of all the departments, some centralized control, and I believe that probably was the most useful outcome permanently of the circus fire.
Today, strict legal codes provide for the public safety at shows under canvas, and today the big top of the greatest show on earth has been replaced by the auditorium and the arena. A quarter of a century has passed since the day the clowns cried at the Hartford circus fire, and the identity of Little Miss 1565 is still a puzzling mystery.
We assume that one or two parents were with her, or somebody accompanied her and died as an unidentified victim. But never was a car discovered in the neighborhood unclaimed, nor a room at a hotel, nor a tenement anywhere in the greater area. So we just haven't any valid theory as to her identification. We think that the adult who accompanied her must have died at the same time.
I still think that somebody picked up somebody else and left this girl, thinking they had picked up their own relative. There's a misidentification there somewhere. Somebody picked up their own body.
Each year on July 6th, the anniversary of the Hartford circus fire, and on Memorial Day, and again at Christmas, Little Miss 1565 is visited by a devoted friend with a gift of flowers. The visits started 25 years ago with two fellow detectives, Tom Barber and Ed Lowe, who spent months searching for the child's name to replace the number. Ed Lowe has passed away, and Tom Barber makes the pilgrimage alone.
Well, the reason why I visit the grave, I have children of my own. And if we were lucky and found someone who would say that that was her daughter, she can always remember that her daughter was taken care of even after death. It's a feeling that we both had. It's a shame this girl was never identified. So we took it upon ourselves to see that she got her flowers, as I said, Decoration Day, anniversary, and Christmas. Until I'm able to go up there, she'll still get them.
Until I'm unable to get up there, she'll still get them. Tom Barber's promise to a little girl he never knew in life.